panning and doubling. No, come on. Hey, Joe Gilder here from Home Studio Corner. Hey, Joe Gilder here from Home Studio Corner. We're talking about production this week. If you haven't seen the last video, go check it out. I talked through several different ideas for how to produce your music and get better mixes as a result. In this video, we're going to focus on panning, specifically how to use panning to your advantage during the recording and production process. Whenever I'm recording a song, I am constantly thinking about panning. Panning isn't just a mixing decision. Arguably, it is more of a recording and production decision than it is a mixing decision. When I record something, I'm thinking, what bucket is this going to go into? Is it going to go in the left bucket, the middle bucket, or the right bucket? Those are my three options as far as panning, where they're going to go. This isn't a treatise on LCR panning. I'm talking about, in general, there are only three places something can go. Somewhere up the middle, somewhere to the left, somewhere to the right. And that's what I'm thinking about when I'm recording. Why? Because you need things to be balanced. I talked about in the last video how cool it can be to take a guitar part that you like, record it again, and then pan them left and right. That can create a big, full sound. It can be really great for a lot of different types of songs, and it remains balanced. There's the same thing on the left and the right so that you don't have this lopsidedness to your mix. But sometimes you don't want to double something, or sometimes you come up with a part that really it doesn't make sense to double, but it also doesn't make sense to put it up the middle. You do want it off to the side. In those cases, you have to think of what's going to go on the other side to balance that out. This is especially true on songs that are more sparse and don't have just a huge amounts of things happening. It becomes even more important to make sure that A, you don't have everything right up the middle so the song sounds mono, and B, you don't have too many things on one side versus the other. There needs to be a sense of balance there. For an example of this, we're going to look at a song from my upcoming EP. This is a laid-back piano ballad. It does have drums and bass. I'll mute those here at the beginning so you can hear what's happening with the rest of the instruments. Initially, I recorded piano, liked that, knew I wanted some sort of a soft organ sound underneath, so I recorded that. Both of those, in my mind, are middle things. Even though they're stereo tracks, I'm panning them straight up the middle and not to the left or the right. Take a listen. Sounds nice, sounds lovely. Could just leave it with that, drums and bass. But what's the problem? Well, it's really mono. Even though there's some stereo sounds, there's nothing living over to the left or living over to the right. I knew I wanted more. Not huge production, but I wanted something tickling my ear on the left and also on the right. So the first thing I reached for, since I'm really just an acoustic guitar guy, was an acoustic guitar, and decided to record something very simple, finger style, and I knew that was going to be on one of the sides, so I put it over to the left. As soon as I was done recording and I said, yeah, I like that, then I knew next task is to figure out, okay, this one's over here, what's gonna go over here? Another acoustic playing that same part? Maybe, but no. It needs to be something more subtle. So I decided to go for some sort of electric piano sound. And you may think, you already have piano, why would you do another keyboard part? Because you can, and it sounds really cool. So I went for kind of a Wurlitzer sort of sound, playing not the exact same thing as the piano, playing some little melodies and little rhythms that are a little bit different from the piano, but then panning that all the way to the right balances off of the acoustic and also gives us an extra texture that makes the song a little more interesting. So at this point we have 4 tracks. We've got piano and organ up the middle, we've got guitar on the left, and we've got Wurlitzer or Whirly on the right. The final thing I knew I wanted was some sort of a lead guitar. Not like ripping meedly Joe Satriani lead guitar, but something just subtle, also finger style, but playing chords and then a few little riffs here and there. And for me, anytime it's kind of a lead guitar, probably I'd say 70% of the time, I'm gonna opt to put that up the middle because that just makes more sense to me. Lead vocal goes up the middle, lead guitar goes up the middle as well. And that works for us because that means I don't have to come up with something else to balance that lead guitar because it's gonna be right up the middle. So everything is kind of nice and balanced. Guitar and Whirly, piano and organ, lead guitar on top of that. So we haven't overproduced it, we haven't put in so much stuff that it sounds busy. It still maintains a lot of that kind of openness that I was wanting in the song, but now we've got several things. I mean, you listen to it and you think, that's cool. You don't quite realize there's so many things happening, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 tracks just there that are really filling out the production of the song. Now let's listen to it in context with drums, bass, and vocals.
Listen to your Father singing over you the truth. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are fearfully and wonderfully made.
So let's shift gears a little bit. Another song on the EP, it's a bigger song. It's the title track for the album called Amen. And on this one, the second verse the first half of the second verse is kind of the pivotal moment of the entire EP. And I wanted to make an impact. So it says some stuff during the verse, and then I want the verse to end with this big wham. You can see in the session there's a marker called wham. That's where I wanted it to hit really hard. So I produced it in such a way to make that happen. We've got drums go down from kind of full kit down to playing something on the toms, guitars drop down to like a palm mute thing, and bass was kind of playing this junga 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 junga, really, really cool. And then they hit really hard on that wham part and start playing more full. So here's what it sounded like. I did what I talked about in the last video. I doubled the guitars, played essentially the same thing twice, and it was sounding pretty good to me. And here's what it sounded like. So you can hear it already does that. It's small, then it swells and gets big, and I loved it. But there was something there about it that I wasn't quite liking. It felt like the guitars weren't getting big enough. It felt already a little too big for the verse, and then when it slammed, it just didn't jump from small to big. And I like those small to big jumps. So here's what I did. I took one of the doubled guitars, and I muted it. And then I took the other one and I automated the panning to come up the middle. So for this whole verse section, instead of stereo guitars, it's mono guitar, mono bass up the middle, and drums, which are kind of mostly mono for this section. And I even brought that tom to the middle. So everything's up the middle for this section. And then on the big wham part, they split back out to stereo, and it makes you feel like the verse has sucked you into the middle. Everything's kind of simple and, chill out here in the middle, and then wham, we jump out to the, I just shook the whole desk. We jump out to the sides, and it just has even more impact than it did just then. Let me play that for you. Now, is it the guitar going from mono to stereo that makes that section? No, it's mostly the drums and the hugeness of the arrangement. But that little change does make a little bit more of an impact. And those are the kind of things you can do. Take a section, if you're having a hard time getting a section to go from feeling kind of big to feeling really big at the chorus or at the next section of the song, try making the prior section more mono and then make it jump out to stereo once you get to the next section. It's a great way to add impact, and it's fairly subtle, but it works. Okay, those are some more ideas to add to your production tool belt. Remember, mixing is great, but only if you've produced really great tracks that already sound great. If you haven't checked out my brand new production checklist, go check it out. It's super cool. It'll help you ask yourself the right questions to make sure your productions are moving in the right direction. Go to homestudiocorner.com/checklist to get that for free. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Churches more obsessed with